Let me share my screen. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
First of all, good morning and to all of you. First off, I should apologize. I'm part of the young Timorese that cannot speak Portuguese. Maybe I should learn more in the future. But today it's first of all it's a great honor and pleasure for us for me especially to share our experience in managing the resources from or revenues from the non-renewable resources. I think the first session today is very interactive and very touching on many important points. So that's things that we have been experienced as well in Timor Leste. So I will share some of this experience, and I think you can relate a lot with what presentation before this one. So my presentations basically to cover topics on the Petroleum Fund of Timor Leste. I will talk about the objective, the key features, the management of the funds. I understand that Mozambique also will start establish its own or working on establishing its own sovereign wealth fund. And then I'll touch a bit on how it links, the fund links to the budget. Well, you'll see the role of the parliamentarians in deciding with the governments on how the budget is allocated and the money from the fund is used wisely and to benefit of the people of Timor Leste. And then lastly, I will touch on the experience of of Timor Leste, what works and what still we need to improve. There are issues that we need to work on. So as you can see, Timor Leste Petroleum Fund was established in 2005. The owner is the Ministry of Finance on behalf of the government. And then the central bank is the operational manager of the fund. At the moment, until June 2022, the fund has reached $17.8 billion. It's huge compared to Timor Leste GDP. It's like 10 times or even more than that. So it's very big money compared to Timor Leste economy. And one important thing I think also touched before is about transparency requirements. So this is very important when you manage the big or very coming from the non-renewable energy like this. As you can see from the top left, the fund started in 2005 and it continued to increase until 2014. And then since then, it started to flatten. This is because first is the oil price fall, the production also declining. And at the same time, we start to withdraw the money from the fund to transfer to the state budget. In 2019 and 2021, we've been lucky because of oil price started to increase. Production remained low and low, declining, but then we have make a good year from the investments. In these 3 years, we made around $4 to $5 billion just from the investment return alone. And also at the time, the withdrawals of the fund is quite small compared to the other years. And on the allocations of the fund, basically the fund is divided into two. One is we call it the financial market investment, which is most of the fund or 90% of the fund in there. And then we also invest in, we have allocations up to maximum of the 5% of the fund into the oil operations related project through our state-owned company, state-owned oil company. And in this financial market, we also have liquidity, what we call liquidity portfolio. This is just to secure 3 years of expected withdrawals, and then the rest of the money is in the growth portfolio. We'll talk about this as we go on, and then and also why the reason behind why we have to set up our funds like this. And just to briefly touch upon why we established the fund. So basically, the objective is to make sure that we manage the revenues from the petroleum resources can be used to benefit both and current future generations. That's the first objective. So it's basically, it serves two things. First is as a saving fund and also as a stabilization fund. Saving fund is to use for, if the money not used, you can use it, you can save it, invest it for the future generations so they can use it in the future. But also it serves as a stabilization fund, which is through the budget when in situation like COVID last year or 2 years ago, the government have to intervene into the through the budget to save to neutralize the economic in Timor Leste. And it also the second objective is to make sure that we consume or use the money properly through the better fiscal policy, because as you know that normally revenues coming from non-renewable sources like this is that sometimes can be very big, bigger than your economy. So if you allow this to go directly to the country, then it can overheat the economy, create inflation, waste, and so forth. So for us, especially Timor Leste is very small economy, and then through this arrangement, it's helped us a lot in more wisely to how to use the money properly. And just quickly on this key feature, in our Petroleum fund, a bit different from other countries. So all the inflows from the activities in the petroleum sector is go directly to the fund. It's never come through the country. So there is like for instance, the income tax, the tax departments, taxation departments, they only record it. They receive payments. They receive only payment notice from the company, but they never see the money. The money is going directly to the Petroleum fund account in the Federal Reserve of America, and all others like royalties, profit oils, payments is done directly to the fund. There are certain parts that have to go through some authority because we have to share the revenues with Australia before. But apart from that, the money has to be directly go to the Petroleum fund account. Second is that it's linked to the budget. The only way the money can go out from the fund is through the state budget, and it requires a parliament approval. So without parliamentary approval, we cannot withdraw any money from the Petroleum fund. And also the budget is or fiscal policy is guided by what we call the estimated sustainable income. So our fund follows what the concept of the permanent income hypothesis, basically that if you consume only the return of the fund, you expect the fund can last longer, can be more sustainable in the long term. If we don't use the money, if you invest in you decide to save it, then we mostly we invest abroad. As I said before, we do this because our economy is small. The domestic development already done through the budget transfer every year. So we don't want to the fund invest directly to the economy because it will overheat the economy. So at the moment, most of the fund invested in the bonds and equity, and then only 5% in oil-related operations. And it's very important is that about the high degree of transparency, governance, and accountability. This is very important part because it's build the confidence, build the trust from the public to the institutions and also the government and all the policymakers as well. It's very clear roles. We have to publish our quarterly report, even monthly report, and also annual report to be published to the parliament and also in the public available. This is very important. Again, I have to reiterate this is because this is something that we feel in Timor Leste. It contributes a lot to how we manage the fund. This is just to show you the governance structure at the moment. So on top of everything is the national parliament. They annex or establish the law, Petroleum Fund law and other laws. Inside the law is already have the objective, who very clear institutions that involve in the management of the fund. It's and also where can you invest, the eligible investments. There should be limits on the risk that you can take in the Petroleum Fund. And then Ministry of Finance is on behalf of the government, they as executive of the fund, basically to formulate the investment policy, monitor the fund's investments, and also report to the parliament annually, and also through the budget process. In doing so, the Ministry of Finance normally have to get the investments and advice from the Investment Advisory Board. It's not binding advice, but Ministry of Finance have to seek the advice from the Investment Advisory Board before making any investment decisions. And the central bank is the operational manager. It's basically to implement the investment policy. And as discussed before, not all the members of parliament understand financial market and not understand the managing of the fund. So they have their own advisory board called the Petroleum Fund Consultative Council. It's coming from many, there have some people that have knowledge on the financial market, but mostly their role is to advise on whether the money has been used to benefit the people of Timor-Leste. So this is mainly the role of the Consultative Council to advise the Parliament. And so this is just to show you the mechanisms on how the fund is linked to the fund. So as I said before, all the revenues, the investment returns have to come to the fund. And then only allowed to go out to transfers is to the state budget, and then require the parliament approval. And we only transfer normally 3% of the petroleum wealth, but if needed, the government can transfer more than the ESI, above the 3%. In fact, every year, on average, we transfer around 5% of the fund rather than 3%. As long as they can justify and give certifications, report to the parliament. So without parliamentarian approval, the money cannot be transferred. The government cannot have budget. So this is to show you how our experience so far. As I said before, it's very important that when we have the public support and very broad political support. In this managing revenues like this, there are, if you want the fund to live long, to last long, then there is requirement of the very strong political support. Otherwise, the money can be finished in just a few years. And as in Timor-Leste experience, the Petroleum Fund law is one of the laws that enacted with anonymously supported by all parties. And so far we have accumulated since 2005 when established around $24 billion have been paid. We've been used or transferred to state to finance set budget around 14 billion, okay, gained around 7 billion US dollars. Actually, it's $9 billion until 2021, but for 2022 we have made loss around $1.9 billion so far year to date. So this is a huge loss, but as I said, as I showed before, the 3 years before we made around $4 to $5 billion. So it's kind of a good outcome to us still. And it is very when it comes to this situation, it's very hard every year when we make between the parliamentary and the government and to discuss about how much to save, how much to use. This is especially in the country that small like Timor, where the basic infrastructure, the health and education facilities is not there. And then while it's very hard to justify why you keep the money rather than use the money for building this infrastructure. But this last point here is that basic is because our economy is so small, we cannot use all the money at once. So that's why the fund has been helping us to separate this volatility and high revenues from the spending, and then we can use it for later on. We start very simple. We don't want to complicate things. So we started basically when you invest it, we have to invest only in the government bonds, very safe, with a low return, but safe. It is because we want to build the confidence and capacity first when we, in our, with the stakeholders. So as we gain more experience and knowledge, we introduce the equities, we're taking more risk, because we also see the fund as a long-term investment, has long-term investment horizons, so we can take more on risk. But this is, when you do this, we have very important that you have strong or consensus or understanding from the key stakeholders, because you don't want to change your asset allocations when the fund doing perform bad like now. Because when you invest in the equity, something like that, you require to have more than 5, 7, or even 10 years of horizons. And it also helps us to, as before, gradually use the money. And again, I touch upon the fund has this very high degree of transparency, very clear roles and responsibility. We also, Timor Leste is one of the third country in the world that become EITA compliant country. And then we also subscribe to Santiago Principles and part of the International Forum for Sovereign Wealth Fund. This is just to have connect to very good practices. So bring up your this will ensure that the fund management is managed well. So far, the fund has been success, helping us a lot, but we also have a lot of issues as well. It's not, the fund cannot solve everything. It's only one part of the country nation building. As I said, Timor Leste is one of the highest oil dependent country in the world. Every year we have to transfer around, or the transfer for the fund represents around 80 to 90% of the state budget. And we have issues now. The petroleum revenues have peaked. Now it's declining, and our other potentials revenues only come maybe in the next 7 or 10 years. So after 2022, there won't be any more revenues from the oil sector. So we have to wait. So we only live, or the country as a country, we only live with the $17 billion for the next 10 years. So in this case, so the policymakers, our policymakers have to think very strategically, very creatively in how to use the money to develop the non-oil economy. Unfortunately, we have issues like we have limited pool of skilled labor, our human resource at very limited talent. So even in the investment side, it's very limited. So this is why we have been struggle, but a lot of attention has been put on how to move out from dependence on the petroleum. It's not easy, because when you receive the money from the petroleum revenues, while you don't really need to work on it, you don't really need to sweat, you need to work hard for this, and then you just get the money. Compared to if you do agriculture, then you have to go work hard. So this, in this case, we've been neglecting our other sectors because of the petroleum revenues. And the last point on this one is about the fiscal sustainability. As I mentioned before, the petroleum now is declining. This is our last year for our current oil field productions. And then we'll have to make very hard decisions on how much to spend, how much to save for future generations. It will be, so we have to develop a lot of fiscal long-term projections and have to be very disciplined on what fiscal that we have projected, or we have to commit on for the future for the next at least 3 years. So this is why, if you go back to my earlier presentations, we have in July last year we decided to divide the fund into two. On the part of the financial market, investments we divide into two. One we call the liquidity portfolio. This is just to make sure that we have enough money. We invested in the low risk assets, more cash and short-term maturity bonds to finance the withdrawals, while we can still try to seek for high return in the growth portfolio. With this strategy, at least help us to manage the risk during the situation, bad market situation right now, and also reconnect back to the investments, connect the investment strategy with the fiscal policy. So we try to get higher returns still. But it's very important that we have very clear objectives on how to manage this portfolio, because you know which part is to be withdrawn, to be taken out. You know which part is to be left invested for a longer time and can take more risk. And with this one, at least give the policymakers confidence that the near-term withdrawals there to finance the programs, the plannings, or the promises during the elections that have been made is secured or protected from the volatility. At least they have the 3 years of horizons of the availability fund money to finance their project. I think and this is all from my side. Thank you.